Hey there, and welcome to the BoardGame Sherpa channel. Today's episode will be Shameful, or more specifically, about the Shelf of Shame. And in the spirit of the New Year's, it's time to make a resolution to shrink your shelf. So let's cue the opening and get started. The Shelf of Shame is just a goofy name given to the stack of games that board gamers have accumulated over the years, but have never played for one reason or another. It's very similar to a stack of unread books on one's nightstand. As it is with most board gaming terms, there are people who hate the term Shelf of Shame and prefer to use the term Shelf of Opportunity. Whatever you want to call it, it's fine with me, but it's time to start knocking your pile down. And that's where the BoardGame Sherpa channel comes in. To shrink your Shelf of Shame, first you need to know how each game got there, and whether it should be there. Then figure out how to start reducing. If you've been watching previous episodes of the BoardGame Sherpa, you know I like to group things, so let's start categorizing. The first category is pretty simple. New games. These games are hopefully only temporary on the Shelf of Shame, but basically they are games that are so new that I just haven't found the time to bring them to the gaming group. I've got all these games in the last 3 months, and I'm really excited about playing them, but I just haven't found the right time or group to play them with. But they will be played soon and off the Shelf of Shame. The next category is a little harder to knock out. Games that need a lot of players. Like the name says, these are games that need more than 4 players to enjoy, no matter what the box says. For example, Captain Sonar says it's for 2 to 8 players, but every review I've heard said not to try it without at least 6 players. Board Game Geek recommends 8. Dixit says it's 3 to 6 players, but Board Game Geek recommends 5 to 6 players. Secret Neighbor Party Game says 5 to 10 players, but Board Game Geek says it's best at 11 plus players. Now, why would I buy these games if I knew they had these recommended player limitations? Well, I got a really good deal on Captain Sonar and Dixit from stores that were going out of business, and I figured they'd be great games to have just in case I had a game night with over 4 people in attendance. A lot of my games have 4-play max limits on them, and I wanted games that would include everybody. But then COVID hit, and I moved to a small place, so getting more than 4 people to a game night hasn't been as easy as it used to be. For Secret Neighbor, I was running a pretty good werewolf game on Zoom, but it started getting stale. So I was hoping to change it up with a little different game. But the rules and physical items in the game made it difficult to play on Zoom. But I still have hope to play it. The next category is a bit of a weird one, but I'm sure many of you can relate. Games I like having, but have no intention of ever playing them. Avalon Hill is a legendary pioneer in the history of board games. They have been publishing games since 1952. Now, I was never a fan of wargaming or historical battles, but I loved professional wrestling as a kid and loved stock market simulators in the early days of PCs. So when I saw Rasslin and the stock market game at a used game sale, I bought them as an impulse. And they're a bit dated. Luchador by Backspindle is everything I want in a wrestling game, so I don't need wrestling. And computers are just so much better at stock market simulators. I like owning these games by a legendary company, but I just don't plan to ever play them. This category shouldn't be considered as part of the Shelf of Shame, as I have no regrets in buying them, but I really don't have any plans to play them. So are they really shameful? Probably not. But I'm leaving them in this video to drive home the point that the Shelf of Shame games have to be games you want to play, but don't. The next group are games with crummy rulebooks. These 3 games I really wanted to like, as their themes were tailor-suited to me. I'm the head of a cosplay group called the Legion of Supervillains, and we go to horror and comic cons regularly. And all 3 of these sound like something that would help bring quite a few of my cosplay friends into board gaming. But when I started reading their rulebooks, I couldn't figure out the rules at all. I hit Board Game Geek, YouTube video, and the manufacturer website, and there was nothing that explained what the words in the rulebook meant, at least at the time I was trying to learn them. I tried, but I ended up putting them away to try again in the future. But so far that day hasn't come, and that's why they're still on the Shelf of Shame. The last category are the epitome of the Shelf of Shame, and I just can't justify why I haven't played them. Most shameful games. Cryptozoic's Ghostbusters is a game I kickstarted back in 2015, I think. The problem with this game is that the all-in Kickstarter was too impressive. And when I got it, I had money bags in my eyes and decided I was going to put it on eBay and make mad dollars. So I never opened it. But I never got around to selling it. And eventually my thoughts of riches crashed as it started selling for even less than what I paid for it. So it stayed in the Shelf of Shame, unopened, and will probably stay there for a long time. Hunt-A-Killer, Body on the Boardwalk. This is a game I demoed at Gen Con 2022. I got pulled away by friends in the middle of the demo, and so I guilt bought it. It's a play once, solve the murder, and that's it type of game. I'm guessing I will always find another game I'd rather play. I should probably sell it. Fresco by Queen Games is a game for one of my first Gen Cons back in 2014 or 2015. My own personal BoardGame Sherpa and traveling buddy, Johnny Rocks, brought it along to play at the hotel after we got back from the convention, and I freaking loved it. I went back the next day at Gen Con and bought it. But they only had the Super Box version with 3 expansions included. More is better, right? Not so much. I started reading the manual and realized I just wanted to play the original version, but pulling the original version out of the box was pretty confusing. I meant to go back to it, but 8 years later, I still haven't, and it's still in the shrink wrap. This one is the one that I actually regret not following through on, and defines why the Shelf of Shame is called that. And finally, Buffalo Games Apollo NASA Moon Missions. This is a game that my BoardGame Sherpa Johnny Rocks told me about on the phone. He made it seem so cool, and I got so jazzed that I went out to Target that night and bought it. I was hoping to break it out the next game night with him. But then, Role Player Adventures happened. A bunch of my gaming buddies got into it, and so I tried it. And I fell down a huge rabbit hole with it. Every game night since then has been monopolized by playing Role Player Adventure. I could easily do an episode purely on that game. Bottom line is that I just haven't had the opportunity to play this. Theoretically, it should be in the new games category, but I've had it over a year. So that's the end of my Shelf of Shame. But there is hope. There are quite a few games behind me that were former Shelf of Shamers and eventually got played. The biggest one was Shadows of Camelot, which has been on the Shelf of Shame for over 2 years before I actually played it. The best way to minimize your Shelf of Shame is to figure out what games you actually want to play and then prioritize them at the next game night. And the games you really don't want to play, you should probably just sell or give them away. They're taking up space that a more deserving game could occupy. And who knows, if someone in your circle gets it from you, they might learn and show you how to play. Win-win, right? What games are on your Shelf of Shame? And what's stopping you from playing them? Post your stories in the comments. As you've probably noticed, my board game career has definitely been influenced by Johnny Rocks. I'm realizing now is the time to make a video about what exactly a BoardGame Sherpa is and how to find one. Johnny will always be my BoardGame Sherpa who helped me navigate the board game world. And I created this channel to pay his Sherpa-ness forward to beginners who don't have a Johnny Rocks in their life. So subscribe to this channel and you'll hear everything about what a BoardGame Sherpa is in the next video. And while you're at it, please give this channel a big thumbs up and comment if you can. It'll really help me out a lot and we can bring new players into the hobby, which will help us all when we're trying to find people to play our favorite games. Deal? So go hit those like, comment, and subscribe buttons, and we all win. See you next episode.